Hey, I'm Carlo from AYCB, and today I'm going to be showing you how to play Renature, which is basically an area majority game with dominoes. So players are going to be taking turns placing dominoes along the board, and then adding plants to the board adjacent to those dominoes to score points. Once everyone has placed all their dominoes, the game will end and the player with the most points will win. Yes, it's a nature-themed game. Yes, it's got this beautiful artwork and these cute little animals and whatnot, but it's actually a deceptively competitive game that can be pretty mean at times, and I mean that in the best way possible. So stick around for a few minutes and let me show you how to play. Ensure the Joker marker starts on the butterfly space on the far left. Follow the setup rules depending on player count and fill each player board with the correct number of plants. Each player has the same number of plants in their own color as well as this beige neutral color. Each plant has a value. Turfs are worth 1, bushes are worth 2, pines are worth 3, and oaks are worth 4. Regardless of player count, also fill all 6 of these cloud spaces with cloud tokens. Note that the game board has 2 types of spaces: brook spaces and area spaces. These brook spaces, where the water flows, is where the dominoes will be placed. These brown area spaces are where you'll be placing plants to try and gain the majority in the areas. Follow the setup rules to ensure each area has a face-up area token of the correct value. Also add cloud tokens to the 4 area spaces on the game board marked with clouds here. Mix up the 55 dominoes face down and deal them out as follows: 13 each for a 4-player game, 18 each for a 3-player game, and 26 each for a 2-player game. Each player should mix up their dominoes and randomly draw 3 to form their starting hand. Do not show other players your dominoes. Determine the starting player, and then depending on player count, first player starts with 4 points, second starts with 3 points, and if there are more players, third would start with 2 points, and fourth player would start with 1 point. So in Renature, you'll score the bulk of your points in 2 different ways. First off, either when you're adding plants to the board on your turn, and the other way is when a surrounded area is scored for majority, and the player with the highest and also the player with the second highest value will score for majority points. So on your turn is going to follow 4 possible steps. You start by A, placing a domino, B, placing a plant, C, any potential scoring that would trigger, and then step D would just be refilling your hand back up to 3 dominoes. Let's look at all those steps one at a time. First, step A. On your turn, you'll choose one of your 3 dominoes and place it on the board, adhering to the following rules. Each half of the domino must cover an empty brook space. No placing dominoes on area spaces, on top of each other, or beyond the grid. At least one domino half must be beside a matching animal or on one of the 4 starting spaces. However, the Joker marker shows the current Joker animal. This animal can be placed beside any other animal, and any animal can be placed beside it. The Joker marker can only ever be changed with a cloud action, which we'll see later. All animals beside each other must match. And when the rules say beside, it always means orthogonally adjacent, never diagonal. For example, if the current Joker animal was the frog, then the only domino that could fit in this spot here would be the double frog, since it's the Joker animal. If ever you cannot place a domino or you just don't want to, you must discard one to the box instead. Step B. After you place your domino, if either side of your domino has a free area space beside it, you can place a plant of your choice on one adjacent area space. In this case, after placing this domino, you could place a plant here, here, or here. If an area token is in the way, just move it to any free part of that area for now. During this step, you can either place a plant of your own color, or you can place a plant of the neutral color. For the purposes of this type of scoring that'll happen right now, the color doesn't matter. The color will only come into play for the majority scoring later. If you place a plant on an area space with any cloud tokens, take those cloud tokens and add them to any free spaces on your player board. If you don't have room for them, you may immediately take a cloud action to free up space. If ever you place a domino and there are no free area spaces beside your domino, you cannot place a plant that turn. Step C. After you place your plant, you'll score points for it. First, you'll score 1 point for the plant itself. Then, you can score 1 additional point for each other plant in that area with equal or lower value. So for example, if I put a bush here, which is a value 2, first I would score the 1 general plant point. Then for the bonus, I'd score 1 point for each of these turfs. So that's 2 more points for a total of 3 points this turn. I would not score any points for the pine or oak since they are of higher value. So as areas fill up, the opportunities for points will become more lucrative. And remember, when you're adding these plants, you score the points regardless of whether they're your color or the neutral color. But there's also a second part to this scoring system, and that happens only when an area has been completely closed off by other dominoes. Let's take a closer look at that now. An area is considered closed off if each of the brook spaces beside it is either covered by an animal or isolated, meaning a single free space that is no longer possible to fill since all pieces cover 2 spaces. And remember, diagonal spaces do not count as beside or adjacent. So something like this would still count as closed off. If any areas were closed off this turn, score those areas immediately. First, calculate the total values of each player's pieces in the area. In this case, black has a total value of 5, 3 from this pine and 1 for each of the turfs. Neutral has the second most with 4, a single oak. White has a total value of 2, a single bush. The player with the highest majority immediately gains the main points indicated on the top of the area token, and the second place gains the next highest amount. If either the first or second majority is the neutral player, nothing happens to that amount of points. So here, black would score the main points on top, and since the neutral player has the second highest amount, no other player would score the secondary majority points. Any pieces of colors that are tied are considered not to be present for the sake of majority scoring. So in this case, if black had the main majority and then neutral and white were tied for second and third, they would actually cancel each other out and the blue player here would get the secondary points. Finally, once any area is closed off, after calculating the scores for majorities, the player whose domino closed off the area that turn gains the area token and keeps it face up in front of them. Remember, these tokens have secret values on the bottom. Once any player has gained one, they can look at that point value underneath, but should keep that secret from other players until the end of the game. So in step D, you would just draw another domino, refilling your hand back up to 3 tiles. If your reserve of dominoes is empty, you'll just skip this step. If you have no dominoes left anymore at all, you'll just skip your turn for the rest of the game, and the other players will continue taking turns until all dominoes have been placed, at which point we'll look at final scoring. But before we look at final scoring, let's get back to those cloud actions I was talking about before. So as I mentioned, everyone starts with 6 of these cloud tokens on your board, and on your turn, you can use any number of these cloud actions as long as you can afford them. So each player starts the game with 6 of these cloud tokens, and you can never hold more than that. On your turn, in addition to your regular steps, you may perform any number of cloud actions. Each one costs a different number of cloud tokens, and each of these actions is depicted on your player board. First off, at any time on your turn, you may spend 2 cloud tokens to change the Joker marker to any other animal of your choice. Another option is, at the end of your turn, you may spend 3 cloud tokens to immediately take another turn. You can take as many turns in a row as you can afford. The other thing you can use cloud tokens for is to return plants from the game board, even from a closed and already scored area, back to your player board. The plant can be of your own color or it can even be neutral. The cost to return it is equal to the value of the plant. So looking at your player board here, 1 cloud token to return a turf, 2 for a bush, 3 for a pine, or 4 for an oak. As long as you can afford a cloud action and you follow the proper rules to take it, you can take as many of them as you'd like on your turn and in any order you'd choose. So now let's look at final scoring. First, 1 by 1, score any unsurrounded areas that still have area tokens. Only score the majorities, so no player will gain the token itself for the value on the back. Next, each player gains 1 point for each cloud token remaining on their player board. Then each player loses points equal to the total value of all plants remaining on their board, regardless of color. Finally, flip over any area tokens you collected and gain the points showing on the back. And the player with the most points wins. If there's a tie, the player with the most area tokens in their possession wins, and if there's still a tie, then players have to share the victory. And that's how you play Renature. If this video helped you out, please consider giving it a like, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, better yet, even tell a friend about us. Otherwise, that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.